Okay, moving right along, our next speaker is going to be speaking on something she's calling What Your Face Might Say About You. Intriguing. Dr. Michelle Trautwein is an evolutionary biologist and the Schlinger Chair of Diptera at the California Academy of Sciences. She's an entomologist whose research interests lie in the continued discovery and understanding of the evolution and diversification of flies and other arthropods that live in association with humans. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Trautwein.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me. And I have a video, too, that you could just start and play. So I study face mites, and my research on human face mites was really born out of basically this unbelievable reality that we all have arachnids living on our bodies. So, I mean, can you imagine that right now you're not the only animal using your face? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable to think about. So I call them face mites. But the truth is they live all over our bodies. So they could equally be called ear mites or nipple mites or genital mites, just to let the shock settle in a little bit. And what's crazy is that they live in our bodies, and so you'd assume we know a lot about them. But the truth is we know very, very little about them, and that really gets me excited as a scientist. So what we do know about them, let me give you a little primer. So they're in the genus Demodex, which is a genus of microscopic mites that live in the skin of mammals. So we're not alone in having these mites. They're part of our mammalian heritage. And as Homo sapiens, we're fortunate enough to have not one but two species of mites. So this is one of our species, Demodex Folliculorum. Look, he's got this long, beautiful tail. Look at his little stubby legs. He's so cute. Here's his mouth. He's handsome. He's a gorgeous creature. And then Demodex folliculorum has a short, stocky cousin named Demodex brevis. And both of these mites live in microhabitats, separate microhabitats in our pores. So for the past couple of years, myself and a team have been sampling hundreds of people for their face mites. And we've made some interesting discoveries that I want to share with you. The first one, you're not going to like very much, I can already tell. But the first discovery is that you have them. You almost certainly have them, every single one of you. So when you look in the scientific literature, about 10 to 30% of people are reported to have face mites. And that's because scientists are looking for whole mites, whole bodies. But we decided to just start scraping faces and looking for mite DNA. And lo and behold, we find them on 100% of people. And so what this means is that these mites are sneaky little buggers, right? They're microscopic, and just because you don't see them doesn't mean that you don't have them, because you almost certainly do. But you're lucky. Look how cute they are. So the second thing I've discovered about these mites is about their transmission. And so what I've found is that you don't share your face mites with strangers, but you do share them with your family. So you're not going to get mites from the guy you sit next to on the ferry on the way to work, which is how you'd get your head lice, which is a whole other talk we can have another time. And what we find is that these mites are actually transmitted primarily from parent to offspring. And that means they're incredible markers of heredity, kind of like your own DNA. So that leads me to my third discovery, which is my very favorite discovery so far. And that's that these mites, they aren't just parasites on your body. They're actually these incredible storytellers. And by studying the genetic evolution and the diversity of these mites, we can learn more about our own ancient history and our ancient migration around the world. So I'm just at the beginning of this phase of my research, but what I've discovered is that Demodex evolution reflects human evolution. And so different people from different places all over the world host very different lineages of mites. And so that means if you are of Asian ancestry, you host an Asian lineage of mite. And if you're of European ancestry, you host a European lineage of mite. And what's really interesting about this is their persistence on hosts. So, for example, I've sampled people of Asian ancestry that may have lived in the US for several decades, and yet they still host really distinctly Asian lineages of mites. Even more amazing, when I sample African Americans, I find that they very often still host a very distinct African lineage of mites, even if their family has been living in the US for generation on generation on generation. So, by sampling your face mites, I can tell you something about your ancestry. So I'm sampling people from all over the world to get this incredible picture of this global human diversity, to sort of grasp at what fine-scale resolution can these mites retell us our own stories about our ancient migration. And what I'm hoping is that I can use these mites as this independent line of evidence to, for example, date when our species first migrated out of Africa, when we first colonized the New World, when and how we then colonized the Pacific Islands. So it's a really incredibly exciting system, especially for me as an entomologist. And so I don't want you to think about I don't want you to begrudge the fact that you have these face mites, right? I want you instead to think about them as these incredible creatures that are actually full of mysteries and secrets that are yet to be revealed. And I want to leave you with one final thought, which is that for me, this face mite research really brings me back to my 7th grade science class. This is way before I ever imagined I would be a scientist. And I remember sitting and memorizing facts, thinking that all the cool stuff had really already been discovered. All the really interesting things had already been found out. But the truth is, and I want you to go home and tell this to your little budding scientists at home, the truth is we have so much to learn and so much to discover about the species that live all around us, right? Even the ones that are right under our nose or in our nose. So thank you very much for your attention.
Dr. Michelle Trautwein, thank you.